rethinking our wildfire options. What if? What if one of the keys to reducing our fire risk wasn't just fighting fires, it was actively working with nature? It might sound a bit unusual, but the reality is these hazards of drought, heat waves, floods, and fires, they're all interconnected. They're all natural parts of a process that's bigger than us. But they become disasters when they connect with our human vulnerability. And unfortunately, what seems to be happening is whereas in the past we've gained amazing development because we could harness fire, we're now becoming vulnerable because of that very same fire. But that fire is becoming larger. It's becoming uncontrollable. They're becoming called megafires. These megafires can cover hundreds of square kilometres. They can be so intense that we can't put them out anymore. We've got examples like the Palisades or the Black Summer fires. We had firefighters risking their lives, facing hell on earth. They still couldn't stop those fires. Nature stops the fire, rain, or a physical barrier. So it's really important to understand that the news calls them unprecedented, but we have to remember that these megafires have been predicted for the last couple of decades. They've been predicted, but we weren't prepared. And I suppose when we're rethinking our wildfire options, one of the key things we have to think about is being better prepared. There's a financial toll. The United Nations Office for Global Disaster Risk Reduction says that in 2023, it was about $2.3 trillion US. That's more money than Elon Musk has, and he plays with rockets. So it's a lot of money. But one of the things that we learned about is the Productivity Commission, government organisation, not an environmental organisation, they come out and say, every $1 we spend preparing and mitigating fire is worth $10 of response and recovery. As a bit of quick maths here, that's a 1,000% return on investment. Now, in any other sector, you'd say, why wouldn't you take a 1,000% return on investment? But what's happening is we continue, disaster after disaster, to have these inquiries and reports. They keep saying the same thing. We need to invest more in mitigating and preparing, but we're still not. It's still about 90% response and recovery, 10% on mitigation and preparedness. We need to kind of shift that. And one of the ways we shift that is we look for different options. And for me, one of the options that I hope you'll agree with is nature. This is a great example of a lesson we can learn. There's been some beautiful research about beavers as ecosystem engineers. Beavers are just doing what beavers do. They build beaver dams. Those beaver dams slow the water in the landscape, build up biodiversity, reduce temperatures, and they reduce wildfire as well. So this is a natural wildfire manager. There's a lot of lessons we can learn from the beaver, but the key lesson is beavers belong where beavers belong. They don't belong in Australia or other places. Yes, they're great in parts of Europe and America, but what lessons can we take in the other parts of the world where we don't have beavers? Well, the big message we can take from this, slow water can slow fire. There we're learning from nature. A big part of our vulnerability to fire is our choices. In real estate, we continue to pay more money to live close to nature. And it's beautiful most of the time. It's a wonderful opportunity, and it's no wonder people are paying more for it. But even when we know the area is disaster prone or fire prone, we're still willing to pay more. That means we've got more people in vulnerable locations that we need to assist with mitigation and preparedness. While we don't have beavers, there's another thing we can learn from nature: rainforests. They don't seem to be similar to beavers, but they do slow water just like beavers do. They use a canopy that creates shade, a cool, moist environment that actually slows down fire. So For a lot of locations, a rainforest might be a more ideal situation to help slow fire, mitigate the fire before it gets too big. But we won't have rainforest everywhere either. You could get a less flammable food forest. You could use flowers. Basically, anything that you can keep wetter might be able to mitigate fire. And we've all had ideas. Sometimes you think your idea, well, why hasn't someone done it? This is my idea. And I'm still wondering why someone hasn't done it. Irrigated green fire break. So we're taking the slowing water ideas from beavers. We're getting urban water reuse. So in urban areas, we're very lucky. We don't really think about it that much, but we turn on the tap and there's water. If you turn on the tap and there's no water, you've got a bigger disaster to worry about. But we've got that water coming to us, but we're not very efficient with it. And about 50% of that water could be reused as grey water. We've also got an issue with stormwater. In our urban areas, we've got too many hard surfaces, and that means the water that hits runs off and can create flooding because it doesn't have anywhere to absorb. So we can capture that water in rainwater tanks. So there, urban water reuse, we've got enough water to irrigate a rainforest or less flammable forest system as a green fire break. And if we put those two things together, we get a lot of benefits. We can reduce the heat, we can create this moisture barrier, which means we could do planned or cultural burns up against it. We can build up the soils, create wind and ember fire breaks. But most significantly, we've got the potential to reduce fire spread and reduce the intensity of fires. And that means that we can actually suppress them, or we've got a better chance of doing something about it. And so the idea is one thing. It's really important to test ideas, especially when you're talking about fire. Not allowed to go light a fire, but what we did was fire up a computer and run software. There's amazing software out there for different ways to look at fire spread. And you can see the red lines. They're pretty dramatic. We're looking at the intensity of fire. That red arrow, once it gets above that, we're already beyond what's easily suppressible. So that means it's hard to put out a fire at that stage already. As the fire weather increases, so it goes from no fire weather up until super hot, windy, dry day, that's potentially catastrophic. But you can see potentially catastrophic, it's like 15 times what we could usually suppress. Even when there's a cool day, not much wind, it might be humid even, it still might be uncontrollable. That's the future predictions. It's getting hotter and drier. So our wildfire risk is increasing. We need to do something about it. The next line, a little green line, a green fire break without irrigation. It still does really well, but as it gets hotter, as the fire weather gets more extreme, even a green fire break could become fuel. And that's a really big concern. We don't want to encourage something where people put vegetation near their house and it then becomes part of the fuel. So this is why I designed irrigated green fire breaks, not just do green fire breaks. And you see the next block? Wonderful. My hypothesis was correct. It reduces fire line intensity, it reduces fire spread. And that's a wonderful kind of feeling to have, that there is potential. Because it is getting a little bit worrying. If we go with business as usual, you can see it can be catastrophic. It can be uncontrollable. We don't really want that. We want to do everything possible to be better prepared to mitigate fire. And one of the key things about this is we've got the knowledge, it's all theoretical. Now we have to take this theoretical modelling and hopefully try it in different locations. It's important to actually do it physically. And each site is going to be different. You might have a different mix of what water source you can use, a different type of vegetation you can use, different topography. All of these influence what's going to happen. So we need to do a lot of testing to know what works best. But it's worth doing because we need more options to mitigate fire. The idea of working with nature is probably one of the most important parts of this. Beavers and rainforests give us some great ideas. It is possible to use water to mitigate fire. We already look at the amount of water to indicate whether or not we've got the fire risk. We use water to actually put fires out, but for some reason, we don't proactively manage water to mitigate fire. That's probably when we're rethinking fire options. The biggest options I'd like you to take away with is use water. Because when you're doing that for fire, you're also mitigating drought. You're also mitigating heat waves. It's a cascade of hazards that you could mess with if you take a proactive action and manage your water. And I've been fortunate that I studied with Bill Mollison. Some might know him. He's one of the co-founders of permaculture. And it was really wonderful, one of the things he said to me. He said, everything seems to get more and more complex. You have to just kind of ride it and find that embarrassingly simple thing that is the solution. And I think that's what nature is. And I think what I'd like to leave you with is the traditional elders, past, present and emerging, continue to try to tell us their history as the oldest living culture on earth reminds us, care for country and country will care for you. Thank you.